can of whoop-ass feels like.
This is Ozzy Skateboard, and you're listening to UCY.tv.
All right, good morning, everybody. Today is Monday, May 16th, 2016, and this is Before the First Cup of Jules here on UCY.tv. Happy Monday, everyone. It's a sunny 46 degrees here and pretty blue sky in upstate New York. I know we had a little bit of hail, snow stuff going on yesterday, and it got pretty chilly last night. I think it hit like 37 degrees, but I think that's about it. Maybe a high in the mid-50s today, and then it's going to warm right back up again. So I'll be happy. And I ate my first asparagus from the garden this weekend, so it's the only thing that's growing right now, but it was pretty good. So where do we leave off on Friday? We titled the show, Gut Flora Under Assault, Causing Psychiatric Disorders and Disease. We looked at a lot of things last week. I had to miss a day because I had some personal issues going on, but we did 4 good days on gut flora, and the absolutely unquestioned connection now between the gut and your brain and how food directly influences your behavior, your health, your immune system, just about everything about us. Our body is made up of more bacteria than actual human mammal cells, which is really, really tough to comprehend at times. Figuring out that we're just a symbiote for some sort of single-celled organism that lives inside of us. And we've even found that this bacteria, different bacteria, or quote-unquote parasites, or what do they call them? When they live off you and you live off them, the mutual relationship, but you're both sucking off of each other. Oh, I can't think. It's early. But, it's how amazing is that we've evolved. Who would have thunk it? We've evolved in an environment where us and bacteria are cohabitating organisms in this body we call ours. I don't know if anyone caught the show Sunday. Clint Richardson sat in, guest hosting for Shally on Sunday, and had Patrick Jordan on as a guest, and they just went off on another 2 hours of digging down the hole of parasites and prions and how all the stuff is connected together to your health, and then the law and everything. What a great show. Every time I hear those two together, I want to hear 2 more hours. I messaged Clint after the show and told him what a great show that was. And this is really my red button issue. Maybe he'd come on sometime. And he said, absolutely, anytime. So need to get myself to a spot and mentally prepared. But maybe we'll have Clint on. I'd love to have a conversation with him and just start picking his brain. I mean, we've talked about so much of the stuff that they've done so much research into, and yet I never knew that he knew about any of this stuff until Shally turned me on. So I'm pretty happy that there is somebody else out there that's dug into this more than me that I'd be able to ask questions of, because that's, I mean, this is all stuff that nobody really kind of knew before, and we're just all figuring out the puzzle pieces. But there's lots of connections, and it all fits together, and it makes so much sense. So anyway, I want to continue on today because there's the rest of last week's show since I had to miss Thursday. There's another day's worth of show here, and then there were some other stories that came out this weekend that just dovetail perfectly, and this will kick us into the rest of the week. So we looked at living therapeutics. There's a company we found out that is a spinoff out of MIT called Synlogic. They are making this living therapeutics, synthetic bacteria, to be able to search and cure inflammation. Inflammation being the root of all disease, starts in your gut. We found inflammation, and the inflammation chemical is produced when you start having some of these bad bacteria take over the balance between the bad and the good bacteria. And this can be caused by a bunch of different things, but we discovered also by glyphosate, and that's something I want to look at some point today, but maybe a little bit later here. Dr. Mercola and Dr. Huber, what they were talking about with the glyphosate is that the glyphosate actually helped cause the imbalance between the bad bacteria and the good bacteria. And once the bad bacteria took over, that's when all the illness started. And we're talking a large gamut of illness between diabetes, even multiple sclerosis, autoimmune diseases, right? We looked at all that, how it kind of first starts, and it will give you a leaky gut syndrome. We also found, that as it starts to disturb your brain, you get all stressed out, which causes the cortisol response. I mean, it was amazing how many of the different pieces all fit into the same health cascade puzzle. And it was all tied back to the gut. And to fix it, all you need to do to really get on the path to fixing this before it's too late is to start fixing that bacteria. So Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation invest in this company named Synlogic, the spinoff out of MIT, and their big thing is to make the synthetic biotics, they're calling them. It'll be able to do this all for you. Go into your gut, kind of like what Kurzweil talked about someday with Google's nanobots, to be able to go in and be sentry in your system and detect when a disease is coming and then fix it before it ever gets out of control. Well, Bill Gates now is invested in a company that's looking to do the same exact thing, but with synthetic bacteria within your gut to be able to be the sentry and correct everything. Story came out, I don't know, it was last week. There were 2 of them. We find out every day. It's pretty amazing, these simple over-the-counter things that we've been fed, that we were told were safe, that the FDA said was safe, the FDA that watches out so much for you and me. And almost every day they come out with something that's like, oh, remember those 25 years you guys were eating this stuff? Well, we just found out there's a connection between this and some sort of cancer, or this and some sort of long-term mental disorder. It's just incredible. So I see a study last week, folic acid, which is something that when I was pregnant, they were pushing everywhere. Got to make sure you have your folic acid. Oh, a lot of women don't have their folic acid. That's why we put it into all of the breads and the over-the-counter type foods. You'll see folic acid added because Not enough folic acid can cause neural tube defects. I remember that was when the fetus was very small and they were doing the original scans. I was over 30, I think it was 38 when I was pregnant. So I was at that cusp. They kept making me go for all the tests and all the scans. Pretty awful, actually. But, I did it. But one of the things, when they did the first scan, they look at that neural tube and they do measurements to determine whether or not they're going to end up with spina bifida or any other type of neurological disease at a very small stage. And that neural tube is one of the measurements that they take that is pretty descriptive as to whether or not the baby is going to have any type of developmental problems. The story comes out the other day. The study asks, is too much folic acid a cause of autism? And now we're seeing this explosion of autism across the United States. And this is what the doctors were pushing on the pregnant women. Take extra folic acid. Make sure it's in your prenatal vitamin. There is such a direct connect between our bodies and what we put into it, yet we don't understand. And even for things that we would not consider to be poisonous, such as a quote-unquote supplement like folic acid. If they're going to be able to prove that there's a massive link here between folic acid and autism, and they're saying, no, it's not the standard dose that you're taking. They're saying, oh, it's excess, but who knows? Maybe folic acid builds up in the body. I don't know. You get it from 50 different sources a day when you're eating, since they fortify everything now in your food. So if I was taking a prenatal multi, and I was taking a folic, and I was eating some bread and 5 other things that had folic acid added to it, what's a standard dosage? So it's a very good question. Anyway, here, I'll read a little bit of this, but I want to really get into the meat and potatoes of what I want to talk about today. It says, for decades, pregnant women and women who may become pregnant have been advised to take folic acid to help prevent certain birth defects, but a new study suggests it may be possible to get too much of a good thing. Very high levels of the vitamin in the mother's blood at the time of childbirth was linked to the higher risk of their children developing autism years later. And, another thing that's amazing, I'm sure any mother out there knows this, but maybe the guys don't know this, or ones who are single and never had a kid. But, if there's something that goes awry during the pregnancy, like you have gestational diabetes or you have preeclampsia. I had preeclampsia. My pregnancy was really tough. I almost literally died by the end of that. I'm very lucky to be here 10 years later. But it was definitely a harrowing experience. And by the end, I was in the hospital for 9 days for childbirth. Now, you just know the insurance company here in 1 day and out, they kick you out. And I was in there 9 days. Okay. I was in super bad shape. But one of the things that they say after the fact, that if you had gestational diabetes or if you had preeclampsia, there's all kinds of diseases now that my kid is at a much elevated risk for because of my maternal health. And, I was pretty healthy, quote unquote, healthy before I got pregnant. I put a some mental power to it the year before I got pregnant, and it decided that I was getting near 40, and if I was going to do it, I was going to do it. But before I did it, I was going to detox and just be clean. I stopped drinking. I stopped smoking. And I really tried to eat like super good foods just so my body was glowing and full of nutrients before that time. And my autoimmune diseases by that point had kind of gone into remission. It's taken me a long time to but that's really when I started to get into nutrition and figure all the stuff out with the GMOs. But let me just tell you something. When your body goes through something as traumatic as spawning another life, there are so many processes within your body that are involved. And I swear to God, I think my immune system kicked in when I was pregnant. I was already trigger happy with the autoimmunity that had gone into remission. But I really think my body started to act like my pregnancy was a foreign organism and was doing everything in its power to make certain that it knew I didn't like that and react to it. It was bad. But in the end, you find out that even the conditions that happened before you were born, it's even gone beyond that. I just saw something yesterday. Here's something for guys. You want to freak out. Because it's not even like when your mom was pregnant. My mouse is like freaking out here. It's going the wrong direction. When your mom was pregnant, it's one thing. They're like, oh, well, if your mother drank or smoked while she was pregnant, you could have issues with this, that, or the other thing. And back in the 60s and stuff, a lot of times they didn't have any real big taboos about that. Some people definitely smoked in the 60s while they were pregnant. I don't think that there were that many huge things that they pointed to, at least back then in the research, to say, oh, it damaged the children, except for small birth weight and things of that nature. But I don't think what we realized, and I know I remember thinking this to myself because I didn't understand how it was possible, but it's everything that you've done throughout your life that, we understand this now, that's shaped and affected your genes and all the stuff that you've ingested, all the vaccines you've received where some of that recombatant DNA has all integrated itself into your body, even your memories, right? We've looked at this passing down of epigenetic memories from your ancestors to the children generations down the line. And they're digging into that scientifically right now. Memories can be inherited. There actually were two stories, one on that and one on this being able to pass down lifestyle through genetics to the baby. So check this out. All right, guys. Review finds father's age, which, we knew that. Sperm and egg, they get old, but don't worry because eventually they'll be able to make them all in the lab. Father's age and lifestyle is associated with birth defects. And it's not just like the 6 months before so your sperm can cycle out and get some new ones. No. It's over your lifetime. And like I said, when I first considered having kids, this is one of the things I thought about. I was like, shit. When I go back to like when I first started to go awry, 14, 15 years old, and I started thinking about all the stuff I've done in the 30 years following that, I was like, whoa, I don't know about that. But there are people who've done a lot worse. I was pretty mellow. But I remember thinking to myself, well, could this potentially have an effect on my future offspring? And it didn't seem to be a big deal back at that time. It's like, well, you did stuff, but it didn't really affect things. Well, listen to this. There's now a growing body of research that is revealing the associations between birth defects and a father's age, alcohol use, and environmental factors, say researchers at Georgetown University Medical Center. And this isn't like right before they get pregnant, though. They say these defects result from epigenetic alterations that can potentially affect multiple generations. So, hey, if you're 14, 18, 21, of course, in New York State, and have a beer or two or 100, and then sire some children 10 years later, those beers you drank can have an effect on 5 generations from now. Is that really what they're saying? And if that's the case, how are we not all bumping into walls? Because, maybe that's what's happening right now. The epigenetic changes are in high gear with all of these genetically modified foods and crap medicines that they're pumping into us. And they're twisting the genome. They're mutating it to the point where future generations are going to be nothing like us. Human 1.0 is on its way out, and maybe it already is. Have you seen some of these kids lately? Seriously. I just saw someone else saying exactly what I noticed when I was out this weekend. We had an event for school. They did national anthem down at one of the stadiums downtown, the soccer game. And so we went down there for the afternoon for a couple hours. And I have to tell you, oh my God, I don't get out much. I get out to the store and that, but like downtown especially, I don't get down there very often. And I just have to tell you, there's definitely something afoot. All right, these are unnaturally shaped humans. And it looks like we should be living on Mars or in a Wall-E movie. There's definitely something going on here. Study published in the American Journal of Stem Cells suggests both parents contribute to the health status of their offspring. And like I said, I mean, we knew about the mother. We didn't know how far back, but we knew about the mother. But now they're saying the father as well. And we're talking like years, effects on your genes that can all be passed out. And we're talking like real-time effects, though. It's not like it's a one-time thing. Like you were born with these genes and now you pass these down. And any damage that was done before you came into this world. No, that isn't how it works. Anyway, both parents contribute a common sense conclusion, which science is now only beginning to demonstrate, says the study's senior investigator, Joanna Kilinska, PhD and associate professor of biochemistry, molecular biology, and cellular biology. She says, we know that the nutritional hormonal as they're manipulating our hormones and our brain chemicals, and psychological environment, and stress is included in that. So let's look at how messed up our nutritional, hormonal, and psychological environment is right now, through no fault of our own. As we know that the nutritional, hormonal, and psychological environment provided by the mother permanently alters organ structure, cellular response, and gene expression in her offspring. But now, our studies are showing that the same thing is true with fathers. His lifestyle and how old he is can be reflected in molecules that control the gene function. And in this way, father can affect not only his immediate offspring, but future generations as well. For example, a newborn can be diagnosed with fetal alcohol syndrome even though the mother never consumed alcohol. What? Yeah, that's true. Up to 75% of children with fetal alcohol syndrome have biological fathers who are alcoholics, suggesting that preconceptual paternal alcohol consumption negatively impacts their offspring. So there you go, ladies. So now if you're trying to hit all the check boxes to make sure you have the perfect infant, make sure you have the perfect environment as you're trying to dot every I and cross every T, apparently the father can't be a drinker. I mean, I don't know what this is just so beyond, because I mean, think about it. Think about all of our parents. No, I mean, I wasn't born with fetal alcohol syndrome, yet my father drank. And I'm sure most of our fathers drank back in the 60s and the 70s. Who didn't? And they probably still do. So, I mean, if just drinking alcohol and then conceiving a child and you're going to pass down syndromes, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know how severe his drinking has to be. They said alcoholic, so maybe that's one thing. But still, here, let's look at more. The report is a review of evidence, human and animal, published to date on that link between the fathers and the heritable epigenetic programming. Among the studies reviewed are ones that find advanced age of a father is correlated with elevated rates of schizophrenia, autism, and birth defects in his children as well. A limited diet in fathers pre-adolescence. So if the father ate only hot dogs when he was 9 because there was no animal called a hot dog, he wasn't going to eat chickens because he didn't want to kill chickens or be responsible for it, and he didn't like vegetables, then there is a risk that is linked to cardiovascular death in his future children and grandchildren because he ate a shitty diet at 9. Paternal obesity is also linked with enlarged fat cells, changes in metabolic regulation, diabetes, that's a good one, diabetes, obesity, and developmental brain cancer. Wait, let's read that again. Paternal obesity is linked to enlarged fat cells, changes in metabolic regulation, diabetes, obesity, and the development of brain cancer in your future children. Psychosocial stress on the father is also linked to defective genes. Ding, ding. Don't worry about it. Billy Gates and his crew one of these days will be able to come fix them on a whim for $99.95. Psychosocial stress on the father pre-conception is linked to defective behavioral traits in his offspring. And paternal alcohol use leads to decreased newborn birth weight, marked reduction in overall brain size, and impaired cognitive function. Now, guys, what I'm seeing is as they're unraveling all these mysteries of life that, we just all had ways of thinking about things and understanding how the world's connected. Now, as we're zooming in with the Genome Project, and now we're going above and beyond looking at the Brain Project, and now we're at this nano level, microbiological level, molecular level, where we're able to see the interaction between things using supercomputers to crunch numbers and be able to actually see that there's way more than what we ever understood. What we're discovering is that there were so many more influences on our development than what we understood. And I have a really bad feeling, as this healthcare industrial complex is merging with the technology and the military industrial complex. And we've documented that pretty well over the last 3 years. We've also seen now they can make sperm cells and egg cells right out of your stem cells from your skin. And us defective humans, they're finding all these defects in our genes that, hey, you can have little nanobots, or maybe now even new Bill and Melinda Gates sponsored Synlogic synthetic biotics go in, fix you up just fine, make little repairs. How long is it going to be before what we've talked about? Being able to diagnose mental disease now just from your voice patterns, right? That's going to be this whole new marketplace, and being able to cure your mental disease that exists on a spectrum, cure your health diseases that, we now find out that maybe multiple generations ago, our defectiveness, quote unquote, could have been caused by our imperfect parents or grandparents. How long is it going to be that they're going to decide that children with all of these different defective diseases and defective genes should be prevented from being created before they're even born? And the way they're going to do that? Let's do a DNA profile on you, Johnny, and see whether or not, and we've talked about this before, I knew this was coming, to see whether or not you're fit stock to reproduce. Let's get your genome, Johnny. We're going to take a look at some trouble issues that we see in your genes as to why you are not going to be given permission. Why your progeny does not deserve to have another generation on Earth, Johnny. I'm sorry, but you should have thought about that before that cheeseburger you ate at 10 years old that killed your gut bacteria. How insane is this? And it gets even better. It gets even better. Here we go. Memories can also be inherited, and we've talked about this as well. Scientists might have just figured out how. Our experiences get passed down to our children, and our life experiences may be passed to our children and our children's children. And now scientists report that they have discovered that this inheritance, can be turned on or off. We don't want them to be turning things off, people. That's that RNAi stuff, switch flipping, slicing and dicing things. I mean, this is just beyond insanity. We literally are playing gods now. We are at a level where we understand many of the finer functions of what creates life and how life propagates, how life evolves. And I mean, even our personal evolution and the evolution within our family lines. Epigenetics is a study of inherited changes in gene expression, changes that are inherited but aren't inherent in our DNA. For instance, life experiences, which aren't directly coded into human DNA, can actually be passed on to children. Studies have shown that survivors of traumatic events may have effects on subsequent generations. You know, I had always thought about that. We had read a story from Scientific American back about a year ago on epigenetics. One of the things they had talked about was us all having grandparents that lived through the Great Depression. You know, it's one thing because you do have traits within the family. Like my great-grandmother was a hoarder. She saved everything, and she canned and pickled and did all this stuff, and that was because they were raised without bounty, right? Any of us who grew up in the 70s, especially if you had a dad that worked in manufacturing, you know too, we didn't grow up with shit. You know, you had your few toys that you got from Santa at Christmas, and you took good care of those toys. Because if those toys broke, you did not get another one because there wasn't any money. But we were happy. We did our thing. We didn't know that we were poor back then. But the thing is, it taught us things. It taught us to be frugal. I really think that, you know, moving out a week after my 18th birthday and having to make it on my own at 18 and work multiple jobs to put myself through school without a parent doting on me or dropping me checks to pay my rent ever or dropping me checks to pay my tuition. I had to, you know what, sink or swim. Those experiences, I enjoyed them. It was a challenge for me. And I don't like being given things, to be honest. I still don't. To this day, I don't like I like to do it by myself. And if I need help and I ask for help, that means I really need help. But otherwise, don't worry about it. I got it. But I really think a lot of that does come from my family. You know, my family was always a bunch of doers. We weren't a bunch of whiners. My dad always told me, you know, there's no excuses. You know, go, you know, take care. But no, there's no excuses. Just do it. And I think that a lot of the problems that we have today in the world are because these future generations after we came were very spoiled. And maybe those epigenetic genes back from the grandparents of the Great Depression got lost somewhere along the way. There are definitely some people that have that, some people who don't, some people who are savers and always have a plan A, B, C, D, and maybe even an E under the mattress. There are many people who don't. Well, life will always be hunky-dory. They're the ones who drank too much glyphosate, I believe. Epigenetics is a study of inherited changes in gene expression, changes that are inherited but aren't inherent in our DNA. And for instance, life experiences which are not directly coded in human DNA can actually be passed on to children. Studies have shown that survivors of traumatic events may have effects in subsequent generations. The question, of course, is how are these genetic memories passed on? Well, that is the question that right now in Tel Aviv, Tel Aviv University was seeking to answer when they reportedly discovered a mechanism that makes it possible to turn the transference of environmental influences on or off. Now, I would almost think that somewhere in the evolutionary food chain that our cells have an ability to take traumatic events of our past and somehow code them onto the offspring. There was a really good reason for that, and that's called survival of the species, survival of the fittest, right? I mean, if there was a traumatic experience like major forest fires, let's think of the animal kingdom, wouldn't you want that fear of fire and forest fire to be hard-coded into your offspring so it's passed down knowledge-wise? But in Tel Aviv, they've discovered how to turn this passing off. Turn off bits of evolution that, I don't know. Why would we mess with something like this? I would think that epigenetic memory would be a good thing. Their research was recently published in the journal Cell, which was led by Oded Rachchavi, along with a team of faculty members from Tel Aviv University's Faculty of Life Sciences and the Segal School of Neuroscience. And according to their study, epigenetic responses that are inherited following an active process as it gets passed through generations. I wonder if they looked at fruit flies. We previously showed that worms inherited small RNAs following the starvation and viral infections of their parents. Oh my God. Did they just do that? Again, ethics and experimentation. Did they starve and infect the parents of worms just to see how I was going to pass that on? These small RNAs helps prepare their offspring for similar starvation and viral infections. He goes on to explain the research, noting that we have also identified a mechanism that amplified heritable small RNAs across generations, so the response was not diluted. And we found that enzymes called RDRPs are required for recreating new small RNAs to keep this response going in subsequent generations. So from there, scientists were able to determine that specific genes, which they are dubbed modified transgenerational epigenetic kinetics, or MOTEC for short, MOTEK, are also involved in turning epigenetic transmissions on and off. And switching on and off are based on the feedback interactions between the RNA, which are inherited, and the MOTEC genes, which are necessary to producing and transmitting the RNA through each generation. This current study was only conducted on worms, but understanding the principles behind the process of passing on epigenetic information will ultimately lend itself to a more comprehensive theory of heredity, especially for humans. Put on a seatbelt, people. They'll be able to do a DNA swap. They'll be able to pick up a piece of gum that you spit in the garbage, a glass that you drank from, and determine whether or not you're good breeding stock in the future. And if you want to hear something even more bizarro, I guess, I don't know, I'm not getting any of the stuff I planned to today, but it's all right. We'll go out. We could dovetail back in tomorrow. I couldn't believe this story. Scientists now have a crazy plan to sequence Leonardo da Vinci's genome. Did you guys see this? Scientists have just announced, this was May 6th, so 10 days ago, a hugely ambitious plan to sequence the genome of one of the Renaissance's greatest minds, Leonardo da Vinci. And I'm sure that this is in preparation for at some point in the future, they might want to send a sequence over to that Chinese clone factory that's amping itself up to start pumping out 1 million cattle a year. And maybe even humans, they said. So back to the story, involving international geneticists, genealogists, archaeologists, art historians, Bill Gates, and even the Queen. Ding, ding, ding. The project sounds like one of Dan Brown's plot lines rather than a scientific endeavor, but by the end of it, the researchers are now hoping to gain new insight into Leonardo da Vinci's lifestyle, diet, physical appearance, and hopefully his genome. The study, which has been labeled the Leonardo Project, might even reveal whether there were any specific biological markers that made Da Vinci such an innovative and creative thinker. Among his many notable achievements, hello, Mona Lisa, the inventor and artist sketched helicopters and tanks hundreds of years before they were developed. And, you know, as they're trying to crack special things like this, like what made somebody as creative and as before his time as Leonardo da Vinci tick, don't think that they're not going to find a way to put that into the special library. So when you have your synthetic children born in the future, you know, with your smartphone app picking features, the Leonardo gene is going to be one of those, you know, premium additions that you can add for an extra $29.99 and not $29.99, like $2,999. I'll give you the Leonardo package. Good art skills, hand-eye coordination, and he's as smart as a little button. How disturbing is this? Do you think Leonardo would want to be sequenced and put in a database somewhere to be able to be abused at some point in the future and utilized? I don't know. What are they going to do with that DNA once they sequence Leonardo's DNA? This is just, I don't even know what to say about this anymore. Like, the world has gone bonkers. Completely bonkers. And before we were worried about Republicans getting involved in women's reproductive rights way back when, I remember when that was an issue. That was when we had those snatchels and all the women were sending snatchels to their Republican representatives. But I mean, this has gone way beyond anybody who shouldn't be involved in reproductive rights sticking their nose someplace. They want to know about you down to the genetic molecular level. Pull you apart and put you in a petri dish, slice and dice you and in a database. The study, which has been labeled the Leonardo Project, might even reveal whether there were any specific biological markers that made Da Vinci an innovative and creative thinker. And so how exactly do you go about posthumously sequencing someone's genome? Well, a decade ago, it would have sounded crazy, but thanks to advances in sequencing techniques, we all know that human DNA can be preserved for far longer than previously thought. And yeah, we saw just recently Microsoft. There are a bunch of other companies working on it as well, but the newest story was Microsoft is now working on digital DNA storage, utilizing human DNA to store information, and they found out that it could be at least for hundreds of thousands of years, putting our cat pictures on DNA strands. It was just like a teaspoon of DNA. We could put our kitty pictures on there forever. And then if they encase them in glass, too, we saw there was another story about 6-8 months ago. It could be millions of years stored. Over the past 5 years alone, scientists have successfully studied the genomes of all other historical figures, such as King Richard III and Miguel de Cervantes, author of Don Quixote, as well as the fossilized remains of a 430,000-year-old human. More difficult will be getting access to the items that might still have Leonardo's DNA on them. Guess who owns? There's actually two people who own some of those items. We'll get to that. More and more techniques are being developed to recover DNA from people touching things, says Rhonda Roby, a geneticist involved in the Leonardo Project. From where? Oh, the J. Craig Ventnor Institute of California. Ventnor is the synthetic biology mogul, the billionaire, another tech billionaire that's financing a lot of the mad science. I also think that there's a possibility of biological material hiding within paintings, and the challenge would be actually getting the material out of the paintings without damaging the artwork. But to complicate matters, many of Da Vinci's old belongings are now owned by some of the wealthiest and most powerful people on the planet, including who? Oh, good old Billy Gates and Queen Elizabeth II, who both own several of Da Vinci's handwritten journals and sketches. So the team will have to convince them to hand them over temporarily in order to have them tested. Outlining the project in a special edition of the Journal of Human Evolution, the researchers explain that beyond that, they also work on identifying the living descendants of Da Vinci. So yeah, we're going to now trace his genealogy. And then they want to map his family tree in order to get more insight into his genetics and any unique traits that he may have passed down. And there you go. This is going to be now a special line of a family tree that might be approved to reproduce in the future. See how this is going to work? We're going to find all of his descendants and find where his DNA went, find his family tree, because he had all these wonderful traits. We want to study you. And you will be dubbed one of the special group of people. I don't know. I just think that this is definitely going to be used against us. You know, they make it sound like it's all for our benefit, it's all for our health, and once we crack these secrets, it's going to cure you of death and disease. We're going to find out your genes. Oh, we could fix that. Let's flip the switch and splice with some CRISPR. Get this out of here. Put this in there. We'll fix you all up, Johnny. No, Johnny. Don't do it. You're going to be the guinea pig, Johnny, and it's going to be your children of the future that are going to be told that you have inferior, defective DNA. They don't want us. We're the broken ones. We're the ones that open our mouths too much. We're the ones that think. Anyway, so this team is also looking for the final resting place of Da Vinci's own mortal remains, which still to this day remains a mystery. This will involve using radar to scan the floor of Italian churches to try to locate the bones of Da Vinci's father and other family members once they get his gene sequence. If they can extract DNA from what are thought to then be his remains, and then compare these to his living descendants, who might be part of his line today that are alive, they hope to be able to confirm once and for all where Da Vinci really ended up. But far from just an extreme demonstration of science, we stand to learn a lot from the Leonardo project, not least of all what the inventors, we're going to spend all this money just to find out the inventors' hair color, eye color, height, and predisposition to disease. But beyond that, it's a way to bring science, history, and culture together to shed some light on one of the greatest minds in history, perhaps coming a step closer to isolating some of the genes. And here we go. This is what I said, that are shared by quote unquote big thinkers. Right. We're going to find out what those special genes are. There's going to be another one on the list that's an approved gene for reproduction. And wait, let's see who's sponsoring this. Well, you could imagine. It says, I think everyone in the group believes that Leonardo, who devoted himself to advancing art and science, who delighted in puzzles, whose diverse talents and insight continue to enrich society 5 centuries after his passing, would welcome the initiative of this team. Indeed, would likely wish to lead it were he alive today, so they say, says Jesse Osbol, one of the collaborators from Rockefeller University. The team plans to announce their results to celebrate the 500th anniversary of Leonardo da Vinci's death in May of 2019. So there you go. We got a few more years, but They are building a database of desirable genetic traits that we will want to have passed down, or the elites will want to have passed down to future generations. All right, let's see. Not sure here. We'll wait for that one tomorrow, and we'll hit this one now. We got about 8 minutes left. A very disturbing story, and you probably heard about it by now, but it came out Friday, I believe, Friday the 13th, and this was after my show. I love when these things come out right after I'm off air, so I got then 2.5 days to chomp on the bit before I can get to it. Scientists talk privately at Harvard about creating, and we knew this was coming, a synthetic human genome. Yeah, you heard it. Synthetic genome, no parents in a petri dish. No humans required to make a new human. Scientists are now contemplating the fabrication of a human genome, meaning that they could use chemicals to manufacture the DNA contained in human chromosomes. This prospect is spurring both intrigue and concern, you think, in the life sciences community, because it might be possible, such as through, cloning in the big Chinese clone factory. I added that. To use a synthetic genome to create human beings without biological parents. And don't forget, last year, maybe it was the year before, they had announced that they had 2 more proteins to add to the DNA strand for human 2.0. We have CATG in all of life on Earth, and they now have an X and Y protein as well. They were going to use it to develop drugs and do all kinds of stuff, but they were adding it to the DNA chain and messing around with it already. And while this project, the synthetic human replicant, but I think that was the Google project, was called replicant. Close enough. While the project is still in the idea phase, it also involves efforts to improve DNA synthesis in general. It was discussed at a closed-door meeting on Tuesday at Harvard Medical School in Boston. Nearly 150 attendees were told not to contact the news media or to post on Twitter during the meeting. Organizers said that the project could have big scientific payoff. Ding! It's all about the payoff. And would be a follow-up to the original Human Genome Project, which they finished a few years ago, which was aimed at reading the sequence of 3 billion chemical letters in our DNA blueprint of human life. This new project, by contrast, would involve not reading, but rather writing the human genome, synthesizing all 3 billion units from chemicals. So they're going to take all those 3 billion chemical letters, all those singular letters that they can mix and match in all those different sequences, and they're going to make a synthetic version of every single one of them. And then when you read about things going on at MIT and this company such as Synlogics making the synthetic bacteria, Bill Gates also invested into a gene editing company. And you got Craig Venter working on sequencing Leonardo da Vinci, and he's like one of the daddies of gene sequencing and synthetic biology. Guys, it's being financed by the tech billionaires. And this is not for you or me, right? You see this. This is not for the happy future of your great-great-grandchildren at all. This is making the perfect future human species to go live amongst the stars, or whatever their future plans are, as they bail on us defective humans that have been mutated by the poisons, as we've discovered, that have killed the planet. This is such an attempt to synthesize all 3 billion chemical letters in the DNA human blueprint of life would raise numerous ethical issues. You think so? This is even a bigger ethical issue to me than giving robots rights. Could scientists create humans with certain kinds of traits? Perhaps people born and bred to be soldiers. Hey, super soldier program. Told you it was coming. Or might it be possible to make copies of specific people? Well, yeah. Let's have 100 Leonardo da Vinci's, each one working in the top art schools around the world. Would it be okay, for example, to sequence and then synthesize Einstein's genome? Says Drew Eddy, a bioengineer at Stanford, and Lori Zoloff, a bioethicist at Northwestern University, wrote an essay criticizing the proposed project. If so, how many Einstein genomes should be made and installed in cells, and who would get to make them? Well, Dr. Eddy, though invited to the event, said he deliberately did not attend the meeting at Harvard because it was not being open to enough people and it was not being given enough thought to do an ethical implication of the work. George Church, a professor of genetics at Harvard Medical School and the organizer of the proposed project, said that there's been a misunderstanding. Yes. The project was not aimed at creating people, just cells. Right, don't worry, just we're making cells. That's all. And it would not be restricted to human genomes. No, we want to have the abilities to have like bug pinchers and wings and things. So don't worry about it. We're going to sequence everything that lives on this planet. And that was what the DARPA lady said anyway. She wants to be able to push a button and mix and match traits between species on demand to make life. Rather, this would help us to improve the ability to synthesize DNA in general, he says, which could be applied to various animal, plants, and microbes. They are painting a picture which I don't think represents the project, says Dr. Church. He says the meeting was closed to the news media and people were asked to not tweet because the project organizers, in an attempt to be transparent, was opaque, has submitted a paper to a scientific journal, and they were therefore not supposed to discuss the idea publicly before the publication. Oh, all right. I get it. He and other organizers said the ethical aspects have been amply discussed since the very beginning. This project was initially called the HGP2, the Human Genome Synthesis Project, with HGP referring to the Human Genome Project, and an invitation to the meeting at Harvard said that the primary goal would be to synthesize a complete human genome in a cell line within a period of the next 10 years. But by the time the meeting was held, the name had been changed to HGP Right, testing large synthetic genomes in cells. Whoops. And the project yet does not have funding, so don't worry, says Dr. Church, though various companies, and foundations were invited to contribute, and some have indicated interest. The federal government will also be asked, so it'll be yours and my tax dollars that'll help finance this Frankenstein project as well. And a spokeswoman for the National Institute of Health declined to comment, saying that it was just way too early at this stage. Besides Dr. Church, the organizers included Jeff Boak, director of the Institute for System of Genetics at NYU, Andrew Hassel, a self-described futurist who works at a Bay Area software company, Autodesk. And scientists and companies can now change the DNA in cells, for example, by adding foreign genes, right? And I mean, this is all the splicing and dicing. We could do it to food. We could do it to people. We could do it to animals. J. Craig Ventnor said that he synthesized a bacterial genome that consisted of millions of base pairs already, so this shouldn't really be an issue. All right, guys, if you can even believe it, there was a full hour, so we're going to have to catch up here tomorrow. This is Well Worth Start. Make sure you stick around. Ms. Lonnie Clark is live up next, and then at 3 p.m. Eastern, we have Nathan Frazier and all kinds of great radio tonight live, Anti-Media at 11, and Brandon Turbeville at 9, brand new. Everyone have an awesome Tuesday. I'll catch up with you tomorrow. Take care.